Welcome to AKC Story Loom. Please don't forget to subscribe, share, and turn on your post notifications as it means a whole lot to me. Now let's go straight into the story. Adanna's world was a canvas painted with the bright colors of ambition. A final-year secondary school student, she saw her future in vivid detail. University, a prestigious career, and a life far beyond the small town she called home. The annual end-of-year party was meant to be a final, joyous splash of color before she began a new chapter. It was a whirlwind of loud music, laughter, and a sense of invincibility. It was there she met Chidi, the son of the town's wealthiest family. He was handsome, charming, and seemed to offer a glimpse into a world of privilege Adanna had only read about. In a moment of youthful recklessness and the intoxicating atmosphere of the night, she made a decision that would forever alter her carefully planned future. The first sign was a subtle, unfamiliar shift in her body's rhythm. A missed cycle, a persistent nausea that clung to her mornings like a shadow. Fear, cold and paralyzing, began to creep into her heart. She bought a pregnancy test in a faraway pharmacy, her hands trembling as she paid. Alone in her bathroom, the two pink lines on the stick seemed to burn with a devastating truth. A small, silent life was growing inside her. The invincibility of that night had shattered, leaving behind a profound and quiet terror. How could she, a girl with so many dreams, face her parents and the world with this secret? The weight of the secret grew heavier with each passing day. Adanna became withdrawn, her vibrant personality replaced by a quiet anxiety. Her mother, a woman who prided herself on her daughter's pristine reputation, noticed the change. Cornered one evening, Adanna's voice trembled as she confessed everything. The silence that followed was deafening, more terrifying than any scream. Her father's face, usually a picture of stoic kindness, was a mask of disbelief and betrayal. "How could you bring such shame upon this family?" he asked, his words dripping with a pain that felt like a physical blow. The disbelief quickly curdled into fury. Her parents saw her pregnancy not as a life, but as a stain, a permanent scar on their family's honor. Their voices, once loving and reassuring, became sharp, accusatory tools. "You will not have this baby," her mother declared, her eyes hard. "We will find a way to fix this." The pressure was relentless. They brought up old family friends who had taken care of such problems, and their pleas for her to abort the child were framed as the only logical solution. Their home, once a sanctuary, was now a prison of shame, abuse, and bitter disappointment. Adanna was no longer their daughter. She was a problem to be solved. But within Adanna, a new strength was forming. It wasn't born of defiance, but of a fierce, protective love. She would lie in bed at night, her hand resting on her flat stomach, whispering promises to the life growing within her. This wasn't a mistake to be erased. It was her child. The demands from her parents felt like an assault on this new, blossoming love. She saw the fear in their eyes, the fear of what the town would say, but she couldn't sacrifice an innocent life for the sake of their reputation. She began to realize that true love didn't come with conditions or shame. The decision was not made in anger, but in a quiet resolve to protect her child. One night, with a small bag packed with a few clothes and all the love she could muster, Adanna wrote a letter. It was a plea for understanding, a tearful apology, and a final farewell. Under the cover of darkness, she slipped out of her family's home and began the long journey to the only place she knew she would be safe, her grandmother's village. The bus ride was long and filled with the ghosts of her past, but with every mile, a sense of hope grew stronger. She was leaving behind shame and walking toward acceptance. Her grandmother's village was a different world. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke. Chickens roamed freely, and the sound of children's laughter filled the afternoon air. When Adanna arrived, weary and heartbroken, her grandmother was waiting for her. She was a woman whose face was a roadmap of a long, hard life, but whose eyes held a deep and unconditional love. There were no questions, no judgments, only a warm embrace that felt like coming home. "You are safe here, my child," she whispered, her voice a balm to Adanna's wounded soul. Life in the village was a stark contrast to the bustling town. Adanna's days were filled with simple, fulfilling tasks. She learned to pound yams, fetch water from the well, and tend to her grandmother's small garden. The rhythm of village life was a gentle, healing melody. The villagers, a close-knit community of kind souls, offered support without prying. They saw Adanna not as a fallen girl, but as a young woman on a journey to motherhood. They shared their own stories, their struggles, and their triumphs, showing her that life, in all its messy reality, was a beautiful thing. As her belly swelled with life, Adanna's heart swelled with a newfound purpose. The physical changes were a constant reminder of the life she was protecting, and she embraced every stretch mark and ache. The village women, seasoned mothers themselves, became her mentors. They taught her about childbirth, shared herbal remedies, and prepared her for the beautiful and challenging journey ahead. She was surrounded by love and support, a stark contrast to the coldness of her parents' home. Here, her pregnancy was celebrated as a miracle, not a disgrace. The day the contractions started, a sense of quiet fear mixed with fierce determination. The world narrowed to the sound of her own breath and the encouraging whispers of her grandmother and the village midwife. It was a long, arduous process, a battle of endurance that pushed her to her limits. The pain was immense, but with each push, she held onto the image of the baby she was fighting for. She had endured so much to get to this moment, and she would not give up now. She was more than just a girl. She was a mother in the making, the new beginning. Then, a final push, a cry that filled the small hut, and the world changed forever. The midwife placed a tiny, warm bundle in her arms. A daughter, her daughter. Her skin was soft, her eyes wide with a newness Adanna couldn't comprehend. All the pain, all the shame, all the tears melted away in an instant. This was her love made real. She named her Amara, meaning grace, because she was a testament to the grace she had found in the midst of her darkest hour. She was a sign that beauty and love could bloom in the most unexpected places. With her daughter in her arms and her grandmother's loving presence by her side, Adanna knew she was home. She had traded a life of shame and abuse for one of peace and unconditional love. Her life's canvas was no longer a perfect, pristine mural. It was a beautiful, messy, and intricate masterpiece. She was not a victim, but a survivor. She was not a disgraced girl, but a proud and loving mother. In the humble village, surrounded by people who loved her, Adanna found her true self and the promise of a future she would paint, one loving moment at a time. Life with Amara settled into a rhythm of gentle contentment. The seasons passed, and the tiny bundle Adanna had held in her arms grew into a giggling, bright-eyed toddler with her grandmother's smile and her mother's stubborn spirit. Adanna, no longer the scared girl who ran away, had blossomed into a confident and capable young woman. She was a mother, a gardener, and a valued member of the village community. Her days were a tapestry of simple joys, teaching Amara the names of the wild flowers, helping her grandmother prepare meals over an open fire, and sharing stories with the other women under the shade of a great mango tree. But as Amara grew, so did Adanna's old ambitions. The love she had for her daughter was an anchor, but it was also a sail. She wanted more for Amara than the simple, beautiful life the village offered. She wanted her to learn in a school with books and a chalkboard, not just under the vast, open sky. She yearned for a future where her daughter had every opportunity, a future that required Adanna to be more than just a survivor. It required her to be a pioneer. One afternoon, a letter arrived with the weekly mail runner from the town. It was from a distant cousin, filled with news and gossip. The pages spoke of Chidi, the boy from the wealthy family. He had been sent abroad to study, his family eager to distance him from the scandal he had almost caused. But the letter also mentioned that his family's business was now expanding, and they were looking for dedicated, hardworking staff. People from the local community who knew the land and its people. Reading the words, Adanna felt a jolt. A door she thought was forever closed had creaked open. The idea of returning to the place that had once broken her filled her with a mixture of fear and determination. She thought of the coldness of her parents' home, the shame she had endured. But then she looked at Amara, chasing a hen in the dust, her laughter echoing like music. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about Amara's future. That evening, under the watchful gaze of the moon, Adanna spoke to her grandmother. She spoke of her desire to return, to face her past, and to build a new future for her daughter. Her grandmother, wise and loving as ever, simply listened. When Adanna finished, she took her granddaughter's hand. "My child," she said, her voice soft but strong. "You have already faced the hardest part. You have walked through fire and found your way to me. Now you must find your own path, for you are no longer a girl running from a storm. You are a woman bringing your own sunshine wherever you go." With her grandmother's blessing, a renewed sense of purpose, and the memory of her past as a reminder of her strength, Adanna began to plan her return. She would not go back as a victim, but as a mother and a woman who had found her own way. She would face the town, her parents, and perhaps even Chidi. But this time she would do so with Amara's hand in hers, a symbol of the beautiful, resilient life she had chosen to protect. The journey back was not a repetition of her escape. This time, Adanna sat tall on the bus, a hand resting on Amara's head as the little girl slept peacefully against her shoulder. The town's familiar skyline came into view. A skyline that once represented shame now felt like a battlefield where she was returning as a warrior. She was no longer a frightened girl running away. She was a mother returning home to claim a future. Her parents' house looked the same, but the air around it felt different. When she knocked, her mother opened the door, her face a mask of shock that slowly dissolved into a complicated mixture of relief and regret. Her father, who appeared moments later, was a shadow of the man who had once cast her out. He looked older, his shoulders slumped with a burden Adanna could only guess at. The reunion was not one of tearful embraces, but a quiet, tense standoff. Adanna introduced Amara, who, sensing the unease, clung to her mother's leg. "This is Amara," Adanna said, her voice steady and clear. "My daughter." The sight of the child was a powerful truth they could no longer deny. The anger they once held seemed to have been replaced by a deep, aching sadness. The years of silence had been a punishment for them all, and in that moment, Adanna saw that she was not the only one who had suffered. With the first, difficult step of confronting her family behind her, Adanna began to forge a new path. She found a small, modest room to rent and started her search for work. The town's gossip was a sharp, stinging presence, but she met it with a quiet dignity. She focused on Amara, on finding a school for her, on getting a job that would provide for them. The job at Chidi's family's expanding business was a risk, a painful reminder of her past, but it was also her best chance. She walked into the interview not as the girl who had known Chidi, but as a determined young woman with a resume of life experience and an unwavering work ethic. She knew what people would say behind her back, but she also knew who she was. A mother who had chosen love over convenience. A woman who had built her own life from the ashes of her past. Adanna was ready to face the world she had once fled, not to seek forgiveness, but to create a legacy of strength and resilience for the child who held her heart. The interview room was a world of polished mahogany and silent air conditioning, a stark contrast to the dust and heat of her grandmother's hut. The man across the table, a manager in Chidi's father's company, saw a poised, confident young woman who spoke of her strengths and her desire to work hard. He saw a glimmer of intelligence in her eyes and a quiet determination in her voice. He saw a promising employee, but as he looked through her application, his eyes fell on her surname, Ease, a common name but one that stirred a faint memory. Just as the interview was concluding, the door opened and Chidi's mother, a woman Adanna knew only from a distance, walked in. Her presence filled the room, an elegant storm of perfume and authority. She was the one who oversaw new hires, and her gaze, sharp and assessing, fell on Adanna. A flicker of recognition, a brief narrowing of her eyes, and the room grew colder. "Adanna Ease," she said, her voice a low, dangerous hum. "I believe we've met before." Adanna's heart pounded, but she refused to let her voice waver. She met the woman's gaze directly. "Yes, ma'am. We have." Chidi's mother dismissed the manager with a glance. "So you've returned. And you have a child." It wasn't a question, but an accusation. "A child whose father, I assume, is a boy from a wealthy family who was foolish enough to fall for a pretty face." The years of shame and fear, the pain of her parents' rejection, all of it threatened to rise up and choke her. But then she thought of Amara, of her daughter's bright smile, and the love that had carried her through everything. She was no longer that girl. "My daughter's father is not a part of our lives," Adanna said, her voice clear and strong. "And that is by my choice. I am here because I am a capable and hard-working woman who needs to provide for her child. The past is what it is, but my future is what I make it." The woman was taken aback by Adanna's defiance, but also, perhaps, by her honesty. She saw a mother, not a disgraced girl. The coldness in her eyes softened, replaced by a grudging respect. The interview continued, but now it was a different kind of test. A test of character. Adanna answered every question with grace and unwavering resolve. By the time she left the office, Adanna didn't know if she would get the job, but it didn't matter. She had faced her past, not with shame, but with the dignity of a woman who had built her own world from nothing. She had not only survived, she had become stronger. And for the first time since that fateful night, Adanna felt truly, completely, and powerfully free. A week later, a letter arrived with a job offer. To Adanna's astonishment, it wasn't just an offer. It was a position with a competitive salary and a promise of growth. The letter was signed by the manager, but a small, handwritten note at the bottom, in the elegant script of Chidi's mother, simply said, "Character is everything." Adanna started her new job with a quiet pride. She proved herself to be a diligent and intelligent worker, quickly earning the respect of her colleagues. The office, once a place of intimidating wealth, became a space where she could use her mind and build a future. Chidi's mother remained a formidable presence, but their interactions were now professional, tinged with a silent understanding. The woman never spoke of the past, but Adanna could feel the shift in her gaze. It was no longer one of judgment, but of a guarded admiration for a girl who refused to be broken. Life began to settle into a new, hopeful rhythm. Adanna moved into a small, but comfortable apartment with Amara. She enrolled her daughter in a good local school, where Amara's bright smile and quick wit made her an instant favorite. Adanna was building the life she had once only dreamed of, not with the help of a man, but with the strength of her own hands and heart. Then came the day the world seemed to hold its breath. A new car, sleek and foreign, was parked outside the office building. The office buzz was all about Chidi's return from his studies abroad. Adanna's heart pounded, a ghost of her past fear. She had braced herself for this moment, but the reality of it felt different. She was at her desk when a tall, confident figure walked past. He was more man than boy now, his features sharper, his presence more commanding. He was Chidi. Their eyes met for a fleeting second, and in his face, she saw not recognition, but a blank, polite curiosity. He did not know her, not in the way she had known him. He had been sent away to forget, and he had done so completely. But later that week, as Adanna was walking home from Amara's school, the little girl skipping happily beside her, a car pulled over. Chidi, in the driver's seat, looked at Adanna, a sudden, dawning recognition on his face. Then his gaze fell to the little girl, who shared his mother's sharp eyes and Adanna's determined chin. The smile on his face vanished, replaced by a shock so profound it seemed to steal the air from his lungs. The forgotten past was now standing right in front of him, holding his hand. The car door opened, and Chidi stepped out, his tall frame a silent testament to the years of privilege Adanna had walked away from. The polite curiosity he'd shown at the office was gone, replaced by a storm of confusion, shock, and a dawning, terrible recognition. His eyes darted from Adanna's face to the small, trusting hand held in hers, then back to the face of the little girl who looked so much like a miniature version of his mother. "Adanna?" he finally managed, his voice a disbelieving whisper. Who is this?" Adanna's hand tightened around Amara's. She had prepared for this moment for years, and now that it was here, a profound stillness settled over her. She met his gaze without flinching. "This is Amara," she said, her voice clear and calm. "She is my daughter." Chidi's face contorted with 100 unspoken questions. "My mother told me you disappeared," he stammered. "We were told you left town. I was sent away. Why didn't you ever tell me?" "I didn't have to," Adanna replied, her voice holding no bitterness, only a quiet truth. "You were living your life and I had to make a choice about mine. The moment I learned I was going to be a mother, the only thing that mattered was protecting this life. Your family wanted me to make a different choice, but I couldn't, so I left. My grandmother took me in, and she helped me become the woman I am today." He looked at Amara again, his eyes filled with a heartbreaking mix of regret and wonder. He saw a part of himself, a part he never knew existed, walking and talking and holding another woman's hand. He had missed everything. The first heartbeat, the first kick, the first word. He had been away, living a life of comfort, while Adanna was fighting to survive and to give birth to their child. "I had no idea," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I swear, I had no idea." Adanna knew he was telling the truth. The Chidi she had known had been a boy, a product of his family's world, and he had been as lost and unequipped to handle the situation as she had been. But he was a man now, and the truth of his absence was right in front of him. Amara, sensing the tension, looked up at her mother. "Mama, who is this man?" she asked, her innocent question cutting through the thick air. Chidi's gaze met hers, and in that moment, the years of separation, of silent suffering and personal growth, all culminated in a single, desperate plea. "I want to be a part of her life," he said, looking at Adanna. "I'm a man now. I'm her father. Please, let me be a part of her life." Adanna looked at the man she had once known, at the little girl who was the reason for all her sacrifices, and she knew the hardest part of her journey was only just beginning. The storm she had weathered had brought her back to shore, but now a new, more complicated current was pulling her into the deep. She had to decide whether to let him into their quiet world, or to continue to protect the precious life she had built on her own. Adanna walked home in a daze, Amara's small hand still in hers, but her mind replaying Chidi's desperate plea. The world she had so carefully built, a world of her own making, now had a crack in its foundation. The peaceful, quiet life she had forged was suddenly vulnerable to the storm of a past she thought she had outrun. The very next day, a summons came from the office. Chidi's mother, Madame Ifeoma, wanted to see her. Adanna walked into the grand office, ready for a confrontation, but what she found was a woman whose steely composure had fractured. "My son tells me you have a daughter," Madame Ifeoma began, her voice low and heavy. "My granddaughter." Adanna said nothing, simply met her gaze with a quiet strength. Madame Ifeoma studied her for a long moment, a new, complicated emotion in her eyes. "He says he wants to be a father to her. I, a woman who once saw you as a disgrace, now see that you gave me the one thing my son's foolishness did not take away." The conversation was not an argument, but a surrender. Madame Ifeoma, a woman of power and pride, was now humbled by the simple, undeniable truth of a child. She offered to help to provide for Amara, but Adanna, with the calm dignity she had earned, refused. "I can provide for my daughter myself," she said. "The only thing I ask is that if Chidi is to be in her life, it must be on her terms and mine. No money, no secrets, only sincerity." Chidi proved to be more than just sincere. He was a man transformed by a love he never knew he had. His first meeting with Amara was awkward, his hands clumsy as he tried to play with her, but his eyes were filled with a raw, undeniable adoration. He began to visit Adanna and Amara regularly, not as a wealthy man making a duty call, but as a father trying to learn. He read to Amara, built her towers with toy blocks, and listened to Adanna's stories of their years in the village, his face a constant portrait of a man coming to terms with his past. Adanna watched, a part of her still guarded, but another part of her heart softening. She saw the joy in Amara's eyes when her father arrived, the way the little girl's laughter filled the apartment. Adanna had fought for so long to be everything for her daughter, but she now saw that a father's love was a beautiful and necessary thing. The decision was no longer just about her pride or her independence. It was about Amara's happiness. One evening, as Amara slept soundly, Adanna and Chidi sat together. "I want to be a family," he said, his voice soft. "I want to be a father to her, and I want to be a partner to you. I know I can't erase the past, but I can build a future." Adanna looked at the man who had once been a foolish boy and saw the man who had become a loving father. She had left her home to escape shame and returned to build a life of honor. She had been a single mother by choice, but now, a new choice presented itself. A choice to open her heart to a future she had never dared to dream of. The most powerful act of her journey was not running away from her past, but finally, bravely, inviting it in. Adanna looked at Chidi, and in his eyes, she saw not the reckless boy from her past, but the man who had shown up, vulnerable and sincere, to be a father to their daughter. Her heart, which had been a fortress for so long, finally opened its gates. The choice wasn't about forgiveness. It was about love. It was about giving Amara the complete family she deserved, and allowing herself the happiness she had earned. "Yes," she said, a single word that carried the weight of 1,000 silent battles. "Yes, we can be a family." Their wedding was a quiet, intimate affair that took place in the village church, a place of peace and sanctuary. Adanna wore a simple white dress, and her grandmother, her face beaming with pride, stood by her side. Adanna's parents were there, their presence a quiet, humbled apology for the past. They looked at their daughter, not as a source of shame, but as a woman of immense strength who had taught them a powerful lesson about love. Chidi's mother, Madame Ifeoma, attended with a reserved grace, and when she met Adanna's eyes, a silent respect passed between them, a truce born of a shared love for a little girl. Years passed, and their life became a beautiful tapestry woven from different threads. Adanna and Chidi built a home filled with laughter and love. Adanna continued to work, not out of necessity, but because her career was a part of her identity, a testament to her independence. She was a mother, a wife, and a professional, all on her own terms. Amara grew up with a father who adored her and a mother who had shown her that a woman's strength could move mountains. She learned about her grandmother in the village and the incredible journey her mother had taken. She learned that a family wasn't defined by blood alone, but by love, sacrifice, and the choices people make for each other. Adanna's journey had come full circle. She had left her home as a frightened girl, running from shame and judgment. She returned as a woman who had found her voice, faced her past, and built a future more beautiful than any she had dared to dream. The mistake of a single night had led to a life of profound purpose, proving that even in the darkest of storms, a woman's love and strength could be the guiding light. Her story is a testament to the power of a mother's love and the resilience of the human spirit.
We've come to the end of the story. What did you learn? Please kindly drop your thought and lesson in the comment section, and please don't forget to subscribe, share and comment. Thank you and God bless you.